My non-existence started off just like any other day. I was looking through my parents' storage room for a photo album with a ribbon binding, something to embarrass my college roommate with memories from when I was a kid, when I came across the wooden box. This box was made of oak, hand-carved and shiny, and a brass plate on it read, Parker Family Memories. That's when I realized I had been erased. Within, I found the tale of my sisters laid out before me. There were 6 photo albums, each one organized by year, that followed the successes of Sophia, who was a corporate genius, and Alina, a musical talent. They documented their lives in vivid color with dance recitals, award ceremonies, and vacations, all accurately dated and described with words my mother had written in her beautiful handwriting. I looked at the pages, at first confused, then growing increasingly frightened. Where was I? I looked through every album, every envelope, every single loose photograph. Nothing. There wasn't even one picture of me in my family's official record. It wasn't a mistake, it was intentional. My hands shook as I recalled the Christmas newsletter my mother worked on for weeks last year. It mentioned Sophia's promotion, Alina's concert at Carnegie Hall, and it simply said family gatherings, even though my name should have been there. I'd thought it was just forgetfulness, me being outshone by my sisters, but this was planned. I pivoted when I heard a gentle squeak from the floorboards. There stood my grandmother Rose in the opening, her gaze shifting between the box and me. In her eyes, I saw something I'd wanted my whole life, acknowledgement. She truly understood me. She recognized me. "Annie," she said, her tone simple yet heavy with secrets she carried. My throat constricted as I raised the empty album cover marked Parker Girls Summer 2023. That trip to Martha's Vineyard, where I captured most of the pictures, lugging around all the gear, making everyone smile, making sure Alina had her music and Sophia had her notes. Always backing everyone up, never being supported myself. "I'm done with this," I stated, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. It wasn't a new decision, made in that instant. It was the product of 24 years of being unseen, of having my dance certifications taken down to give space to Alina's piano accomplishments, being left out of family pictures, of being the unnamed writer behind Sophia's genius business plans. Grandmother Rose didn't attempt to change my mind. She walked across the room and put something cold in my hand. It was a key. "Third floor of my building, apartment 3B, she murmured. "You need to see more." My mother, Isabel Parker, was very thorough. This trait benefited her well as the leader of one of Boston's most admired families, and it helped me even more as I discovered the hidden structure of my own life being erased. I discovered that the locked cabinet in Grandmother Rose's place held a treasure trove of my mother's private journals, personal finances, and confidential letters, spanning 30 years. I immersed myself in these documents for a fortnight, crashing on Rose's couch and avoiding my mom's increasingly annoyed phone calls. One entry from 2018 stated, "Took down A's photo from the art competition, the one in the hallway, putting up S's business award. It's better for the guests." Another entry declared, "Shift A's college savings to fund S's MBA program. It's a smarter financial move." I came across emails that my mother and Sophia exchanged, discussing how to handle Annie's expectations regarding the gallery internship I was heartbroken to miss out on. They'd contacted the director, citing my emotional volatility, and hinted that my portfolio wasn't completely original. The internship was awarded to Alina's roommate instead. "Your mother saved it all," Grandmother Rose said to me while we had tea on the 9th day of my research. "Every single instance of manipulation, every slight, and every time she took away your chances, she wrote it all down." Why would she write down the mean things she did? I wondered aloud. Rose's hands shook slightly as she put down her cup. "Because she learned it from her dad. He did the same to her sister, your Aunt Meredith, who supposedly moved to Europe." Isabel didn't come up with this, she just polished it. That evening, I stumbled upon another batch of bank statements hidden away in a secret compartment, accounts bearing my name that were completely new to me. It was a trust fund, plus gallery contacts. I also found notes about my art, handwritten by Rose. "Exceptional skill, must be safeguarded." My grandmother had been secretly advocating for me all this time. "Annie, the kids need someone to watch them in the playroom," I heard my mother's voice, laced with that familiar air of total command, as she pointed towards my nieces and nephews during our monthly family gathering. I always had to handle the kids while the important family members were busy networking. A hush fell over the table when I didn't get up right away. Everyone was staring at me, my father's fork suspended in the air. Alina paused with her wine glass, and Sophia's eyes narrowed. No, I stated. It was only one word, but it resonated throughout the Parker estate's dining room. I beg your pardon? My mother's smile didn't waver, but her eyes turned icy. I said I'm not going. I'm having dinner, ask someone else. Sophia chuckled in a practiced way, addressing the Huntington Foundation director next to her. Annie's always been the designated childcare provider. It's what she excels at, after all. She shot me a look that served as a warning. Is it? I placed my napkin on the table and stood up slowly. Or is it just another way to get me away from this table, like they did with my family photos, or redirecting my college money to Sophia's MBA? The room became incredibly still. I discovered your journals, Mom. Every single one of them. They meticulously detailed how you've slowly been erasing me for years. My mother's complexion lost all its color, but she quickly regained her composure. Annie tends to be imaginative and loves drama. Sadly, it's often displayed in these paranoid. October 15th, 2020, I cut her off, taking my phone out. A's art submission to the Westmore Fellowship had to be stopped. Too much talent could lead to unrealistic career goals, arranged for package to be lost during shipping. Should I keep going? Across the table, I saw a tiny nod of support from Grandmother Rose. You've manipulated me my whole life, I said, my tone more controlled than I felt. Making me think I was insignificant, unsuccessful, not good enough for the Parker family. But you know what they say about shadows, Mother. I leaned closer. They can grow teeth. I left that night hearing my mother's damage control, her usual laughter trying to convince everyone I was simply going through a phase. However, something significant had changed. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. In my private studio apartment, paid for by the trust fund Grandmother Rose kept safe from my mother's schemes, I laid out the proof and started my planning. My mother had given me a good education, after all. Meticulous record-keeping was a family trait. 2 weeks had passed, and I found myself in my studio, facing a canvas with a paintbrush in my hand, the morning sun pouring in through large industrial windows. My phone vibrated with encouraging texts from some surprising people. Marcus from the Boston Art Institute, who'd sensed something wasn't right for ages. Rebecca Turner, who had worked for my dad and seen my mother's schemes up close. And even some former household staff who knew how differently I was treated. Hanging on the wall behind me was the invitation to the annual Parker Family Foundation Gala, Boston's biggest charity event and my mother's biggest social success. This year's theme was legacy and loyalty. Perfect. I spent the entire night working on my collection, translating my anger into something more challenging and precise. I painted a warped family tree where my part was almost invisible. I did a series of family portraits where my own face was slowly covered in shadow. I displayed the proof of my life and how it had been deliberately hidden, using oils and acrylics. Grandmother Rose came to see me every day, bringing food I rarely ate and information that strengthened my resolve. The college fund wasn't simply money. It was part of a special trust with terms that my mother had broken. My art portfolio had been amazing, and it had been chosen for a significant European fellowship, but my mother had intercepted the letter accepting me. Rose confided in me one night after I described something especially revealing, a reimagining of our family portrait where you could see the brushstrokes, showing how I had been covered up. Mom views you as a danger, she said. Your abilities couldn't be contained or possessed by her. Sophia and Alina went the way she planned, but you were always your own individual. I moved away from the painting, my brush still in my grip. That's what she was trying to eradicate. Rose's gaze, so similar to mine, locked onto mine. That is what she didn't destroy. The Parker Family Foundation Gala turned the Boston Museum of Fine Arts into a battleground the night I took back my life. Boston's elite, about 500 of them, chatted beneath the chandeliers, holding champagne, complimenting the great generosity of a family constructed on purposeful removal. I showed up as my mom was finishing her greeting about the Parker dedication to supporting young talent, a perfect illustration of irony. She paused mid-sentence when she noticed me coming in, not in the usual dress she'd have imagined, but wearing a blazer decorated with pieces of her personal journal. The projector behind her, intended for a heartwarming slideshow of achievements, instead showed something totally different. As I stated, breaking the quiet, my voice booming thanks to the microphone I set up, the Parkers are absolutely dedicated to talent. I mean, really, it's about who gets to shine and who gets their potential squashed. The screen displayed financial records, doctored papers, and intercepted communications, each carefully categorized and with notes. My mother made a grab for the AV guy, but it was already too late. Marcus had taken control of everything earlier in the day. For those of you curious about the missing people in the family pictures hanging in the East Gallery, I went on, let me tell you who I am. I'm Annie Parker, the child who was purposefully cut out of the family story. My dad was frozen, his face going from puzzlement to outright terror as he started to see my mother's penmanship on the documents being shown. Elena seemed truly surprised, more of a victim than a mastermind of my mother's schemes. However, Sophia stepped up, perfectly in control as always. Annie's dealt with feelings of not measuring up for a long time, she smoothly stated. This public performance is, sadly, in line with her past issues with emotional stability. Is that the same emotional instability that you conjured up to ruin my chances with the Westmore Fellowship? I asked, giving a nod to Marcus as he moved on to the next slide, which showed emails between Sophia and the fellowship director. Or maybe the one you mentioned when you contacted my thesis advisor and implied my work was stolen. Murmurs went through the group. The society photographers, present to take pictures of Boston's charitable giving, were now taking images of something quite different. Just a few doors away at Gallery 19, I stated, the Urban Arts Collective is showcasing a special exhibition tonight. It's titled Invisible Ink, The Architecture of Erasure. Each artwork is linked to documentation illustrating how that specific period of my life was deliberately expunged from the family records. I stared directly at my mother, whose flawless facade had broken, revealing the rage underneath. I'm a believer in being open and honest, Mom. I got that from you by reading every single journal entry where you planned to sabotage my life. My last slide showed up on the screen, displaying a trust document with my name on it, as well as my deceased grandfather's signature. The Parker Family Trust specified that all eligible descendants should get the same educational funding. Diverting those funds wasn't just unethical, but also illegal. As I made my way out, the public parted, and the museum employees opened the doors to Gallery 19. There, my exhibition waited, the tangible result of all that had happened to me, converted into artwork that couldn't be ignored. The unseen daughter, I said at last, is unable to attend. You're isolating yourself from everyone, my mother accused, finding me in the ballroom about an hour later. Even though the event continued around us, the mood had shifted completely. Others were watching us, and conversations stopped when we walked by. The entire family connections will be broken, your future. My future was already destroyed when you decided I shouldn't have one, I shot back, hoping nearby guests would hear. You didn't just conceal my pictures, Mother. You withheld opportunities, acknowledgement, financial help that was rightfully mine. Sophia approached our mother, a strained smile on her face. Annie, you've always been one for drama. Maybe we should talk about this privately as a family. We're way past needing any privacy, I said. But let's definitely talk about family. Let's talk about how you deliberately helped stifle my career while profiting from the misuse of my trust fund. A small audience had grown around us, including 2 members of the Huntington Foundation's board. You've always had difficulty with stability, Sophia tried, her voice sweet with a fake worry. We've only ever tried to shield you from sadness. I held up my phone, playing back the audio recording of her voice. If Annie gets that gallery exhibition, we'll never be able to stand it. It's better to make sure the show goes to someone we can manipulate. I already had a talk with Richardson about her inconsistencies. People pulled out their phones and began recording the argument. My mother gripped my arm, her nails digging into my flesh, drawing blood. You unappreciative little. Isabel, my father's voice interrupted as he arrived, looking pale. He had just come back from looking at my exhibition. In his hand, he had the repainted family portrait where my likeness had been covered over, the brush strokes leaving a faded suggestion of my appearance. What have you done? The head of the museum board came closer, his face serious. Mrs. Parker, I think we should keep this talk in my office. There are serious accusations about misusing funds intended for art programs. As they took my parents away, I felt someone touch my shoulder. Grandmother Rose stood beside me, upright and determined. "It's over," she said softly. But it wasn't over, not yet. The legal battle dragged on for months. The trust was put under the court's control, with a good chunk of its money given back to me. The judge suggested a criminal investigation into money issues that reached further than my situation. It seemed I was not the only one hurt by the Parker family's scheming. My cousin Sarah, calling from Chicago, sounded distressed as she detailed how she'd been pushed aside. Her ambition to go to medical school thwarted to make way for her brother's pursuit of law. Others who used to work for the family shared tales of being coerced into assisting with the family's deceptive schemes. I ended up in San Francisco, having been awarded a scholarship to the Institute of Fine Arts. Suddenly, people wanted my art, though I saw the absurdity of my increased recognition being connected to scandal. I figured it was a necessary sacrifice for my own liberty. My dad filed for divorce, unable to accept what my mom had planned for all those years. Alina contacted me cautiously, saying she didn't know the full extent of the manipulation. I kept her at a distance, not quite ready to trust her but not wanting to completely shut her out either. Sophia went off to Europe, her reputation in Boston completely damaged. 6 months after the gala, I went back to the storage room where everything had started. The wooden box was still there, even though my father now owned the house all by himself. I put a new album in it, titled Reclaimed, that held records of my exhibition, newspaper articles about the trust being restored, and pictures of my new life in San Francisco. On the very last page, I included a simple note. Being unseen wasn't just how things were. Someone made it that way. Once I shut the box, my phone buzzed, and it was a text from Sarah. She'd gotten around to submitting her medical school application, thanks to the updated family trust's financial assistance. My first interview's scheduled for next week. I'm scared, but I'm prepared. I grinned as I wrote back, "You'll do great, I know it." Certain obligations can't be paid back. Certain scars will always linger. But as I help people escape the darkness that individuals like my mother caused, I've discovered something greater than retribution. I've discovered that my mission is to make sure no one else fades away.